man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while, when will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome in, everybody. Today we're going to talk about maturity and your lack of it. It's going to be great. But before we sort of jump into that, we've got to get stuff taken care of. We've got our Sam Powell. Hopefully you do as well, or some similar such thing. I've got my Muppet mug. Do you have yours? Have you considered? You should consider. It's very important. Good stuff. And I've got two different types of medicinal tea. Polly has decided to join me. I've got some Jordan almonds today, so maybe I'll mow on those later. And let's read from our sacred tome, Taleb's book of aphorisms. I will go to a random location. This always works out so well, it's insane. Let's see. Suckers think that you cure greed with money, addiction with substances, expert problems with experts, banking with bankers, economics with economists, and debt crisis with debt spending. Well, he's not wrong. And why do they believe that? Because they're not mature. It has been another wild week. Lots of weirdness going on as usual. A lot of people not understanding the world. And 0% surprising to me, of course, but these things happen. The real question is, what's going on in the world, right? Like, what's happening? Why is everything so strange? It's a valid question. Why is everything so strange? I don't know, but things are so strange, and so we have to kind of figure out why. Well, a lot of it boils down to maturity or the lack thereof. A lot of the stuff that I'm seeing lately is people not understanding sophistication, people not understanding how to take things seriously, people being confused about inside words and outside words, for example. And you may have noticed I finally got my animation out. Thank you, Castle. He did a wonderful job. And Sarah, of course, edited everything together and made it work. And it looks gorgeous. We've got some comments on that video. It's one of the more popular videos now, which is nice. The limits of our perspective are something we don't understand unless we're mature. And we're going through a lot of people not understanding the limits of their perspective. And that's very much what that video was about. I realized, sort of based on one of the comments later, that I could have added to it, but I'm of two minds on that now. I'm like, if you don't understand this, anyway. Yeah, try to make things simple, and somebody's there to mess them up. So let's jump into maturity. I think the issue here is that we don't have a good definition. So let's start, as I sometimes do, with etymology. So it's basically ripened, fully developed. And then later, this is in reference to fruit, right? And this is all 14s and 1500s. For some reason, all of these crazy words that we use come from the same time period that might be important. Fully developed powers of body and mind. So first is fruits and vegetables, is freaking plants. And then all of a sudden they're applying it to people. So a differentiable object that has its own discernible properties and qualities in the world. That's how I'm going to cut that apart on the scientific side, because scientists suck at sciencing, actually. So I just do a better job. It's not my fault. You want to be independent from the plant or the thing that bore you, the thing from which you fruit, but now subject to the world. And so maturity is that careful balance between developing under the protection of something and then being subjected to the world. I think if you think of it that way, that's kind of the best way to deal with it. And again, this is this crazy trend of applying science words about nature to beings that are made in the image of the ineffable creator of all things. I don't know why you would do such a thing, but that is the world into which we have been torturously born. Wasn't always that way. And it's gotten worse recently. But that trend goes all the way back to the 1500s for some weird, indiscernible, unless you know any history, reason. So we talk about maturity in a couple of different ways. We talk about physical maturity, we talk about mental or emotional maturity, and we treat these as separate items, which is very strange because you can't do that in the plant world. Mm. Mm. So they're very much separate items to us in the realm of the person. And when your physical doesn't correspond to your mental maturity, we notice because the emotional state is related to the coherence of the person, and the physical is all we have to look at. So, how do you judge how mature a person should be? Well, you got to look at their physique. You don't have much of a choice. I went to school once with a guy named David. It's very funny. He was about as big as Goliath. He was huge. He was 6'1", man, and we were not in high school. We were not in junior high. This kid was enormous. The reason why I remember David, he's a super nice guy. But the big reason why I remember him is because there was snow in the schoolyard. And he grabbed some snow, cocked his hand back to throw it. And when he cocked his hand back, he knocked me out because I was standing next to him or something, probably in a foolish place. Entirely my fault. But he felt bad. He's like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." But he was a big kid. He was also fairly mentally mature, we'll say. And that was, that was rather nice, right? So it's good to know that these things are separate, right? That we do separate them and that we notice when they don't correspond correctly. And how right we are, how wrong we are, whatever. I mean, this is where subjectivity begins and so-called objectivity, if such a thing exists, ends, right? Not important. It's not interesting. But that's the way of the world. Like, okay, we can tell these two things apart. We have expectations around them. Our expectations are going to vary slightly. It's fine. You'll be fine. Get over it. Don't get all philosophical on me. The thing is, if someone isn't mature, however, they won't handle the world well. no matter how physically capable they may be of handling the world or any given situation. They won't feel a part of the world, and therefore they won't act a part of the world. It will always be something that they are physically manifesting discomfort with. Now, that's not a lack of what we perceive as physical maturity. This is going to go to the deeper point of maturity. They won't feel a part of the world. They will be upset by and at the world. They won't understand what is happening in the world as something that should happen in the world. Problem with that is that if it's happening in the world, it's part of the world and you need to deal with it. You can't say, "Oh, that's unfair. I don't like it." I mean, it's kind of immature, don't you think? And yet we're living in a world where this is happening constantly. Why? I don't know. Seems like we have a bunch of immature people around us everywhere. And it's hard for us to describe what maturity looks like in the world. And fair enough. It's hard to describe what maturity looks like. So let's talk a little bit about what maturity isn't. Maturity has nothing to do with knowledge. It has nothing to do with what you know or with this mysterious wisdom thing that everybody's talking about. It has nothing at all to do with those things. I can prove this pretty easily. Children are often wise, but they're not mature. And you can go back and say, yeah, but Mark, you said there's mental maturity and physical. Children are not mentally mature either. That's why they're children, right? They don't have the world exposure, much less the world experience. And those are two different things. That's going to help you if you understand that. To be mature. And you can talk about precociousness and early maturation and all these things. Not helpful. So, of course, then, maturity has nothing to do with education or learning or teaching or training. Subjects that I have covered in videos elsewhere on my channel. It cannot be taught to people. You cannot teach people to mature, right? Now, these things are correlated, of course, right? But that is not the same thing at all. Most mature people have a greater capacity for learning. That capacity comes from the maturation, not the other way around. The world is not symmetrical. You cannot teach or train or educate people into being more mature. That is ridiculous. The maturity comes through the experience of the world. But experience by itself does not convey maturity, especially if you have no control over your emotional state. If you don't control your emotions, you're not going to mature. You're not going to be mature. I think that's where people get confused. When people who are immature are quiet, they seem mature because they seem in control. But when they get emotionally wrangled, their immaturity comes screaming out. Actually, I remember once I was hanging out, this is many, many years ago. I was a child. I was probably 17. I was hanging out at the GNU offices, the Free Software Foundation offices, although I'm not sure it was even called Free Software Foundation yet, although it might have been. And Richard Stallman was there, of course. They were planning to go to dinner. We were out by the elevators of Tech Square, which is the building that MIT had offices in, where the squatters at the GNU Foundation were squatting. They were given the stuff. It's just funnier to talk about it that way. And we were getting ready to go to dinner, and there was some argument about dinner. And Mr. Stallman, then I believe in his mid-30s, if memory serves, threw a temper tantrum. Brilliant software engineer, great visionary, right? Was it the MacArthur Genius Award winner, right? He's won a bunch of this sort of stuff. Very interesting guy. Totally 3 years old, throwing a temper tantrum over dinner. Which, let's face it, if he said, "We're going here," everybody would have said, "Absolutely, sir," because whether they were formal or not, they all followed him. He was the guy leading the GNU lab, so they were all under his direction one way or another, whether he wanted to admit it or not. Total meltdown. Have not seen anything that bad since. No control over his emotions. You wouldn't know it. Here he is programming Emacs, which is an amazing feat, although more of an operating system without a kernel than an editor. But that's for my personal channel. Maybe I'll do a Vim Emacs rant on the other channel now that I've been inspired by my own memories. And the thing is, if you have no control over your emotions, you are your younger self. Like, what is what you are? Like, that's kind of defines what a 3-year-old is, or a 5-year-old is, or a 10-year-old. Right? You don't have control of your emotions. You're going to get trapped in that form of vision of yourself and not be able to get out of it. If you're stuck in the past, you're not mature, or you're not maturing as much as you could. So this idea of a past, and whether or not and to what degree you are able to break free from it, is wrapped up in our idea of maturity. And because you identify as your younger self, and I want you to think about this very carefully as you look around the world today. When you aren't mature, you over-identify with youngsters. You over-identify with children. You don't see why the treatment shouldn't be equal. After all, if you're not mature, you feel as though you are being oppressed just as your average 4-year-old is. This may help you to make sense of some of the craziness and obvious evil that you see in the world today. Over-identification. And so this leads us to my best quick sort of one-line definition of maturity. So maturity is the ability to discern the boundary between inside and outside, not just of yourself, but also of yourself, right? So where you end and other things begin. The differentiation of you and other things from the rest of the world. And this allows you, right? This differentiation, this understanding of the boundaries, of the lines, of the differences, allows you to leverage your emotion for yield. I'll explain that at the end. I'll explain this idea of leveraging your emotion for yield at the end. I apologize that I cannot explain it yet. Let's transition then to talking about what causes you to go through the process of maturity itself. What causes maturity? A constant exposure to the world while being protected from it until such time as you are ready to break away from that which sustains you. And that's a very complicated process. The fruit shouldn't drop too early, it won't ripen. The fruit shouldn't drop too late, it will rot on the vine. So we see the parallels in nature, which is 0% surprising given this word came from a natural science way of viewing the world. Now, that's not wrong, but it has implications when you're dealing with something as complicated as a person rather than a fruit. And this scientification of the world is causing us to deal with these crazy words for no apparent good reason. But the concepts are still valid. And maybe we're over conceptualizing them for sure. But that is a different live stream. So it's not simply that unripened fruit picked too early, and it's not overly shielding the fruit from the sun or the wind or the rain. It's exposure to the world, but careful exposure to the world with nurturing is what ripens. That's what matters with respect to maturity. You have to be careful about maturing something, whether it be a plant or a person. You can't protect them from all the ills until finally they have to leave the nest because then they're completely unprepared. The helicopter parenting or the bulldozer parenting or whatever you want to call it is a real phenomena that we really see. But what does all this mean for people? Children, of course, specifically, but those overgrown children who are now much older than they should be, we'll say physically, uh, but yet still not quite ripe or ready for the world, ready to face the world as it is. How do we define maturity with respect to persons? You mature as the result of gaining context outside of your parents, outside of the environment you grew up in, right? Outside of your fantasy world. This is why video games are poison. The more video games you play, the less mature you'll be. That's why people play lots of video games, tend to not socialize well. It's not that hard. The correlation is there because it's a causation. Sorry. Do the two feed on one another? Yeah, perhaps. Who cares? There's a definite causation. It's not the only cause, but it's definitely there. And if something's reciprocal or whatever nonsense word you want to use, the problem quickly becomes, yeah, so what? The solution's the same. Stop doing it. Why do we care if it's reciprocal or virtuous cycle or whatever? You still have to stop. It doesn't make any sense to care where it came from. You mature as a result of interactions with other people, with nature herself, with trying to do things in the world, in other words, being an agent in the world that changes the world. When you're a baby, you can't really do much. You can cry. Hopefully, you get fed or changed or whatever. And then eventually, you get to put the food to your own mouth and eat at a pace that you think suits you. So you usually be wrong because you're a baby and babies are morons. You're a small child. Suddenly you can get your own cookies. But you have to be constrained from getting cookies all the time, right? This is part of the process of maturing. So you can do things in the world, and trying to do those things and getting spanked when you do them wrong is part of maturing. You mature as the result of solving problems on your own with supervision, but not too much interference. Not zero interference, right? But increasingly less interference over time. And that makes it a long, slow process. And the age of everything moving way too freaking fast, oh my goodness, nobody has any sense of time anymore. We lost that. But time is part of maturation, whether you're talking about plants or persons. We have flattened, compressed time down to nearly nothing at all, which causes universalism. Imagine the level of stupidity one must have to think that, oh, we'll just set up a network. And then every time somebody bad on the network does something bad, we'll report it and then no one will do business with them. Are you not accounting for starting conditions and the fact that people change, you moron? It doesn't get rid of crime at all any better than any other system does. And yet you think you have some a grand new idea. No, you just live in a flat time world where no one ever changes. And just because things, quote, move quicker doesn't mean that they move throughout a large body any quicker than they would using any other communication mechanism. Reliance on the direct communication from others is not better because it takes you away from relying on the intuition that you have for yourself. That may seem good when intuition goes horribly wrong and you get the Salem witch trials. I get that. But also, Salem witch trial is pretty rare. And these other systems are terrible by comparison. Interacting with your past, specifically, in a new way, is part of maturity. Learning how your past had more depth than you realize, maybe even than you realize now. Oh, when I was young, my parents were yelling at each other about this thing. And then it just turned out, yeah, but that wasn't what you thought because you were 6 years old and you didn't know anything. Right. Jordan Peterson kind of goes over this, right? How you can fix your world or move past a problem by adding information and context. And a lot of times that has to be done from the outside. This is what people are missing. I do not give self-help advice. That's insane. You cannot help yourself. You wouldn't be in the bad situation to begin with if you could. Don't be a moron. Talks about this woman who thought that her brother had sexually abused her. And he listens to the story and he thinks, oh no, this is pretty bad. And then he thinks to ask her how old she was, and it turns out they were children, and she was assigning knowledgeable, malicious intent to her brother that couldn't have been there because he was too young to have such a thing. And then her whole world fixes itself. She matured as the result of a new relationship with her past, understanding her past with a different depth that she hadn't previously had. So being in a place where people care about you and know your past is important. Or at least being around a few people who understand your past because they were there and can recontextualize it with you is important. And relying only on people you know is probably not the best strategy either, although better than the alternative, right? You don't want to have it the other way around. And that's hard to do if you are away from home. But this process of encountering your past from different perspectives from other people helps you place yourself in the world. It helps you to ground yourself to what you were, and that gives you a sense for how you've changed. And that change is a type of maturity, hopefully positive maturity. And it's impossible to do that well alone. Impossible. Now, this isn't to say that moving from home away from home isn't important, right? Of course it is. You have to do it at some point. Uh, and some people never leave home and they get trapped in their past, trapped by the society that they're in, by the community that they're in, by an image of themselves imposed by their past. But that is less common, but it certainly happens. Um, there's this trope is everywhere, right? You leave the small town, right? Um, it's in songs, it's in movies, it's all over the place. But that's actually pretty rare. But to be fair, sometimes the only way for people to grow up is to leave home, at least to some degree. And for some people, it's moved completely away. And that is certainly a thing that can happen where that is the best answer. It's just not usually the best answer, right? And college tends to be the stepping stone for things like this. But if you're maturing in college, it's too late. Now, that's not to say that you don't mature when you're in college, no matter where you're at. But if you're doing your primary maturing in college, you're kind of screwed. You should be well able to sleep at your friend's house long before college, right? Spend a week away at camp or whatever it is. And there are far too many people who will say, we're not in that state for whatever reason. The thing about maturity, like as such, we'll say, is it gives you a sense for public versus private. You have a personal, private perspective. This is related to Paul Vanderklay's very interesting idea of secret sacred self. Unfortunately, his idea is not complete. The personal, private perspective is what individualists rely on and believe is primary in the world, which of course it is not. That's kind of stupid, kind of really stupid, and it forces that way of thinking about it of secret sacred self forces you to not recognize that you're preferring a personal, private perspective over the fact that you're a tiny little bug in the world and no one cares. No one cares. But this lack of maturity, you can see it when people don't understand what they're sort of admitting to in public. And there's a lot of, haha YouTube videos or somebody says something that is pretty bad, right? It's a pretty bad admission overall. Uh, and they have no problem saying it. And in fact, when they're confronted, they don't understand why this is a problem. Well, there's a whole, not all of those things, but there's a whole class of those things that mature people would never talk about in public. Like the subject they just wouldn't broach the subject. A mature person knows what is supposed to be public and what is supposed to be private. What are you willing to admit in public? What are you willing to discuss in public? What size audience? What kind of audience? What's the quality of the audience? I say very different things on my Discord server to my friends who I've known for a while than I would say on my YouTube channel in general, right? Most of that, though, to be fair, is just brevity. Like I need to be able to talk quickly to work through my ideas so that I can expand upon them in the notes to give you live streams and regular videos. That's just the way it is. So I'll take lots of shortcuts and do lots of broad brush strokes because I got to get through this topic and I got to hear people's ideas. And every once in a while they get caught up on, well, you said everybody and it can't be everybody. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, I know. Everybody knows. Calm down, right? That happens. But also it's still quicker though. But how you present should matter based on the audience. If you want to think about this in John Vervaeke's Age and Arena Relationships thing, I guess you can. It's not bad. It's just sort of lame. Might be the best you can do. That's fine. If that's the best you can do, boy, then it's the best you can do. Go for it. Maturity gives you a sense of inside and outside and what is the appropriate domain for the thing you're saying. Is it inside? Is it outside? Is it an audience of family? Is it an audience of friends? Because those can be two different things already. Is it my close friends, or is it really anybody that has interacted with me more than 10 minutes? Because it's all different. Excuse me. But you don't have that sense if you're not mature. And people that make that mistake, they're not mature. It's that simple. And which thing belongs where? Does it belong personal? Does it belong more public? Right? And why? Why should this not be made public? Or why should this not be kept to myself? Mm, both of those are possibilities. And when to cross that boundary? Intimacy crisis, anyone? This is the intimacy crisis. It's right here. It's in the lack of maturity. When you're not mature, you can't make quality relationships with yourself, with others, and with nature, much less with the ineffable creator of the universe. If you want to go with 4 frames, I have a video on 3 frames. You can always add the 4th. I don't care. Doesn't make any difference. Doesn't change anything, actually. It may change you, but I don't. Not interested. Broad audience. I don't know you. Sorry. If I do know you, I'm not talking to you, because I'm talking to lots of people. It's a big difference. I have to say different things. If I'm talking to you personally on my Discord server, believe me, you're hearing very different things. You're hearing specific implementations of what I'm talking about and not broad brushstrokes designed to appeal to a larger audience. So I don't need to appeal to a larger audience when I don't have one. See how that works? It's magic. And the problem of no maturity, because let's face it, 3-year-olds are rabid, obnoxious, little individualist terrorists. They terrorize the world with their me, me, me. And that's what they are. But individualism requires a perfect memory. And it requires you to bring your own relevance. But it cannot. And I think that's why guys like John Vervaeke use this relevance realization talk. Now, look, I'm a fan of relevance realization, right? I just think it's undefinable, certainly by Dr. Vervaeke. But it is a way out of the trap of individualism, right? Because what is the process of realization? Oh, we have no idea. They never define it, right? And oh, what should I realize? Right. But what's wrapped up in that is the problem of attention, as Jonathan Bugeaud likes to talk about it. And what's wrapped up in that is the problem of prioritization. Why should thing A be more right? So now we've got judgment right there. So relevance realization leads to the idea of judgment and how you do that and why you do that and what that means, right? And that, of course, brings you one step higher to, well, virtues and values ultimately. The wisdom game is coming soon, by the way. We are in beta test on the electronic version, which will probably not be released, but maybe I'll release it. We'll see. That's just for testing, so we get the board game part right. Maturity, however, is all about how you integrate into the world, right? How you orient in the world with respect to the world and with respect to yourself, right? How you live within the world, participate in the world, cooperate with yourself, with others, and with nature. That is how you fight domicide. People who are immature have domicide. Why? Because they're 3 years old and mommy ain't around. Problem solved. Or they're 3 years old and mommy is around, but they don't want to be 3 years old anymore. So they think because they're 30, that mommy shouldn't be around. And now they're just resentful because they can't do without mommy or daddy or both. Doesn't matter. You get the point, I think. So, how does this relate to emotional yield? What is emotional yield anyhow? Where did you come up with this, Mark? Well, it's Sally's fault. Of course, it's Sally's fault. Should have known that. by now. Control of your emotions is how you are able to keep your body and your mind together, to sync them up, to get them to cooperate. And you cannot do without your emotions, so you shouldn't even try, right? You shouldn't have this flat world version of stoicism, which means just deny all emotions and do the thing. Like that doesn't even work, and it's silly. And no, it's not what the Stoics did. So don't do that. But you do need to manage your emotions properly. They have to have a place within your body so they're not forcing you to throw a physical temper tantrum like Richard Stallman did. And probably still does, to be honest. The last time I saw him, it was rather interesting how little he had matured. I like Richard. I worked for Richard for a brief time. Um, but also, my goodness, what a mess. You need to put the energy and drive or focus, maybe both, that your emotions provide to good use, to get things done in the world, to be an agent, to grow your body, to control your body, for your relationships with yourself, with nature, and with others, right? You need your emotions for a cohesive worldview. You can't have a cohesive worldview without your emotions. If every time you think about the federal government, you get angry, you're not going to cooperate well with the federal government. And if you don't cooperate well with them, they're not going to be able to cooperate well with you. So you're going to be creating what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy of the federal government being mean to you. Well, actually, you're kind of mean to the federal government, and they're retaliating. So don't do that. They're bigger than you, moron. It's not that hard. So if your emotions aren't in control, aren't in check, aren't being accounted for correctly, aren't being put to good use, but are controlling your body or controlling your agency in other ways, you're not going to have a cohesive worldview. You're going to be fighting the world all the time. You're going to run into that cynical skepticism that I talked about in another video. So yield is what results. It's the product. It's produce. It's what's produced. It's what's happened when you have proper maturity. Things are properly mature, they become produce, and now they can be used. The product of your proper care for yourself in the context of others, of nature, and of your own body. That's what happens when you have proper maturity. You have a product of that care for yourself, of that care for your relationship to your body, of that care for the relationship with others, of that care for the relationship with nature. You need that. Your emotions, uncontrolled, will disrupt one or more of those relationships. They will destroy the care and turn it into anger or resentment or rage. I don't have anger at all, actually. Anger is nothing. If you have anger, you're weak. I have rage. Good stuff. If you cannot control your emotions, then you won't be able to go to the gym. You won't be able to hold a job. You won't be able to improve your life. You won't be able to learn anything. And even your body requires your emotions to function and improve. The number one indicator of whether or not you come out of surgery with no complications is whether or not you have confidence in your doctor. Sounds emotional to me. You need your emotions to function. And if they are out of control, you are immature and you cannot function well. So your emotional yield, since your emotions drive your behavior and drive your body, although again, if they don't drive it well, right? Your emotions are the thing that give you the product of your efforts. They are the driving force. That is emotional yield. And that is the importance of maturity. So, what do we do with all of this that I just dumped on you that hopefully you took notes for? If not, you're going to have to listen again and take notes. Listen 100 times. I need the views. But take notes. Where does it leave us? The question that this leaves us with is, how am I not as mature as I should be? And don't ask that question only of yourself, only to yourself. Don't do this alone. Ask other people to help. What things could I improve on? How is it that you view me as immature? And if you find somebody who says, "No, I think you're more mature than I am," ask somebody who doesn't say that. And take a note of who says that. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a thing. Good to know. Where can you improve, particularly on your emotional control? Jordan Peterson loved these stories about his son who apparently had emotional control problems. And he'd just tell him, go sit over there until you can behave. And you'd see him, according to Dr. Peterson, you'd see him himself, right? Trying to will himself, control himself physically, keep in the emotions. And he learned to do it. That was a process of maturity. Where is it that you need to get better? Because the ultimate question, at the end of the day, is what would make you be better? What would make you a better person? And you may say, Mark, why are you asking such a silly question? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because the world needs you to be better. If the world's going to get better, you need to get better. You need to continue to mature. And with that, boy, that was longer than I thought, although I did have more than a page of notes. With that, I shall read some questions. Let's see. Anselman, I reckon maturity is compatible with being young at heart. Of course it is. And a measure of childlikeness as distinct from childishness. Yeah, because the difference is emotional control, right? So those things have no overlap because maturity has to do with controlling your emotions. So hopefully you got that out of it. Polly says hello. Hello. See? Not to be confused with crustacean bed, a marine phenomenon. Was that too childish of me? Nothing wrong being childish. The question is whether or not you're mature. If you're not mature, you might be sufficient. Dickheaded. Nice. Okay. More seafood jokes incoming. Goodness, I hope not. I hope not. Fish and chips, yummy. I had fish and chips today. I have fish and chips almost every Friday. You want fish and chips? It's Friday. You should have had fish. Fish and chips over there is excellent, by the way, because I had fish and chips in Scotland. It was wonderful. Imitation of parents contributes to learning how to face the world. Yeah, it can if they're good exemplars and they do that. The problem is that we've grown up with a bunch of people reading Dr. Spock, who is terrible, among other people, about how to raise children, which you don't read about how to raise like, I don't even know why I'd have to say that. You can't read about how to raise children. What are you, retarded? Like, just stop. Video games are parasitic, Ixnon. That is correct. Video games are parasitic. I got to do the video game videos. I've gotten off track I was going to record today, but I just ran out of time. I was working on the game and getting that done. And I was working on some other projects involving lots of money moving around, or not lots of money because I don't have lots of money. Moving around some money, which is a lot for me because pretty much $10 is a lot nowadays. So I did not get to record. I also had to do the notes for this, which I rounded out a couple of hours ago because, of course, I did. Ixnay, I can remember only one such challenge attempt. Yeah, but you might have had many. But it doesn't really matter how many you had. Like, it matters whether or not you're able to control them. And more, a lot of people get caught up with this. Well, this worked for me, so this is a solution for everybody. That style of universalism is rampant especially in the Protestant world. Like, oh yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous worked for me, so that's the solution for every. Good Lord, no. Oh, I was well controlled, so well controlled is it doesn't lead anywhere, right? Otherwise, I think I was fairly sweet, probably. Observe your emotions. Well, you often can't. What you really need is somebody to observe them for you and tell you, no, you're being a little angry unnecessarily. Sometimes anger is good. Like, you got to be angry. My trick is I tend to get angry and completely overblown and obnoxious about really dumb stuff. Like, really dumb stuff. Like, oh my God, there was a towel on the floor. What's going to happen now? It's the end of I'm not exaggerating about this, by the way. This is actually what I do. And I'll start yelling and screaming about the towel on the floor. And, the world is about to end now because there's towels on the floor and towels don't belong on the floor. And now it's dirty. It has to be washed. And we're destroying the environment and the whole planet, right? And then I just calm right down and everything's fine. And usually it provides a good show for whoever's around. So, Bong Fade. I gained a lot of maturity by really learning a skill. Again, if you do things in the world, that's one way to mature, right? Is increasing your agency in the world. Because as you try to increase your agency in the world, you actually learn to conform to the world that you were born into. And that is part of maturing. Debate me for the video games video. I've done a video games video. You should watch it and take notes. I have notes from somebody else who watched it. It's rather interesting. If you can refute any of the points, then RJ, check the merch store so Polly can afford a cracker. Yes, check the merch store. I have a buy me the coffee link, and we have lots of cool merch, including a Muppet cup, if you're so inclined. And you should be, because it's important to consider, right? Have you considered? You should. You should consider. It'll help you. It will help you. Ansman, I share your fastidiousness regarding hygienic towels. Thank you. Thank you. What's it called? I am not going to look up the names of all my videos while I am doing a live stream. But I bet you could find it by putting video game in the search bar on YouTube, which is, strange as that may seem, exactly what that is for. Just to let you know. So look, I am done ranting and rambling. So if somebody would like to join me and they can be mature, sometimes people can't, and I have to kick them off, then please feel free. I guess, I don't think anyone is watching on Rumble, but I will post a link on Rumble too. Usually I have more than almost nobody on Rumble. Oh well. Rumble doesn't get a good draw either. Nothing's getting a draw lately, although my animation's doing quite freaking well. It's quite popular. It's your video. Bro, there's like well over 200 videos on my channel. I don't have all of the names and titles memorized. I don't even write all the titles. So, RJ, always know where your towel is. Douglas Adams. Yes. Well, there is always that. Not a huge Douglas Adams fan. Oh yeah, I can pin this link, can't I? Because I actually own Navigating Patterns, don't I? How clever of me. I feel very clever. Oh, look, I can even pin it on Rumble. Oh, now I feel like a master of YouTube and Rumble for sure. RJ 42, indeed, indeed. Ansman, from your reading of Plato, do you have much to say on maturity? Yeah, okay. Here's the funny thing about the Republic. So the Republic has a few elements in it that drive the discussion. Okay. One of the driving discussions for the Republic can be classified as maturity. The way it's talked about is, well, someone has to like form the children into something. And then what do we form them into? All children aren't right for one thing, and therefore we need different classes. It's basically what Plato says. It's in the Republic. I have to paraphrase it. I don't have the whole thing memorized by any means, and I never will. And one of the things he talks about on that, which is far more interesting, I know I mention it from time to time because it's fantastically important, is the necessity for forbidden knowledge, which he validates using children. Well, you can't expose children to just everything. Of course you can't. That's insane. Well, if you can't expose children to just anything, and children are part of your city or your world, because they seem to be, I don't know what else to say, then forbidden knowledge has to exist, right? And then if you have specialties like the guardians versus the leaders versus the normal people in the city, or however many designations he makes, I'm actually unclear off the top of my head on how many classes there are in the city, right? There's the philosophers, and then there's the king, and they're different, by the way. In fact, I don't think the philosopher king idea is what people think it is. Anyway, different video. That might be in one of my Plato videos because I have 3 now. The idea that people should know, for example, what the guardians know is absurd, or that the guardians should try to know what the philosophers know is absurd. And so, from that perspective, that's forbidden knowledge. My argument is based on Plato's Republic, by the way, although I came to it before reading Plato's Republic, but I can now base it on Plato's Republic because Plato said it first, obviously. Duh. The way to understand, we'll say, a true philosophy from an ideology, you could say, I guess I can say for sure it's twofold, right? One is an ideology does not account for time and change. In other words, children. So any system that looks to be philosophical or all-encompassing or create a worldview that doesn't account for children isn't a philosophy, but is definitely a flat ideology. All ideologies are flat, right? So the other aspect is that, and the deep irony, deep irony, Lies of Plato's Cave. That's the name of that video, Bong Fade. I know some of the idea that is put forth in book 7 of the Republic, which begins with the so-called allegory of the so-called cave, which everybody misunderstands. See my video, The Lie of Plato's Cave, right? Is precisely that a philosopher has to sacrifice their own personal mission to become a better philosopher for the good of the city. Like, that's actually at the end of book 7. So, like, forbidden knowledge, does it account for children, and does it include sacrifice? All of that is in Plato's Republic. Why we're having discussions about this, as though no one's ever talked about this before, just leads me to believe that people are really dumb, and we've given them PhDs, and I don't know why. Okay, that's all I have to say about that. If somebody would like to challenge me on that, please do, because I have the goods. I have the freaking sections out of the freaking book. So we can do this all day long because I love to win, and I love to win against arrogant, smug little PhDs. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's probably massively unhealthy for me because nothing nothing that gives me that much joy can possibly be good for me. It's a bit like eating poutine or something. Only poutine's a pretty close second. I should not eat poutine. Anyway, uh, yeah, how to recognize an ideology. I wish more people knew this. Takes 10 seconds. Does it count for children? Does it involve sacrifice? It's an ideology. Like it has to meet both those requirements, or it's an ideology. It's a flat, universal, perfect world. We don't live in that. Like I don't know why we like. I know everybody wants to live in that. Like sure, me too, bro. But that's not where we live. So like too bad, right? Whatever you have is not realistic. So anyway, Sally Joe, search got the Windows 11. It might be Muppets. Can't find it. Yeah, well, it should be in there. So what's so terrible about feeling drunk? Ask a glass of water. Another Adam's gem. Well, he is funny. Ixnon, look at the navigating patterns. Framing playlist for the video game video. Oh, is it in the framing playlist? It might be. Bongfade says he can't find it. Don't worry about it. They'll find it some other time. Somebody will find it and post it, I bet. Watch the whole playlist. It'll come up. Yeah, watch all the videos. Watch all the videos in the framing playlist in particular. It will really, really help you. It'll help you a lot. Sandy, good to see you. Hidden dangers of the digital playground. Yes, that might be it, Sandy. It certainly has video game in the tags, and I thought in the title as well. But part of the problem is we generally do separate thumbnail text from title text, and I can't tell the two apart even if I remember them. But yeah, the entire framing playlist is actually fantastically important. So is the models playlist, by the way. Framing, models, arena, agent. No. Oh wait, yes, in fact. So yeah, I mean, look, part of the problem is there's a lot of important concepts that are interlinked on the channel. That's why it's taken me 4 freaking years to get all the baseline concepts down. And now I can do crazy videos like this one where I tie like 5 or 6 of them together and then just point at the other videos because I don't have time to go into all of it. This already went like 48 or 49 minutes. So yeah, I can't, I'm not going to do like a Jordan Peterson-esque style, thing. Although if people wanted that and they all had enough money, I would definitely try it. But part of the problem is too, a lot of this stuff is moving pretty fast. So it's the same message, but how I deliver it has to change based on the fact that the zeitgeist is moving slightly and what people are shifted towards changes. And what people don't realize, because see the video I just put out on Perspectives, my animation, or really Castle's animation and Sarah's wonderful work, sort of demonstrates is that you don't have equal access to the thing that was yesterday's hot thing because you have a today's hot thing and that's over here. And they may be close, but you're still putting something in the peripheral vision. And then of course, that doesn't happen for 2 things. It happens for like 20 things in a year. Like, so you're further away from those other concepts. So I can't jump back to those concepts because your attention's not on them anymore. Right. And so to get a general audience, it's very hard to do that without paying attention to the zeitgeist, which, you can always argue I do a bad job of, but that's why, we've changed up whole words and phrases that we use over the past 5 years because we had to, right? We went from parabolic, which is more technically correct, to poetic in the knowledge engine stuff because that's where the zeitgeist went. It's not my fault. And actually, if you watch the original knowledge engine video, I don't know if it's on my channel that I didn't rename it, but certainly when I talked to Paul Vanderklay about it like 4 or 5 years ago now, we hadn't renamed it. It's called parabolic, not poetic. Same thing though, right? It just, the parabolic name is better, whatever. Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is a lot of these concepts are not new or different, but the way I have to present them changes over time. And so doing a grand linking video, a maps of meaning style thing, while that might be fun, and at least is theoretically possible if I'm on enough of the right meds for long enough, uh, you can actually do these things for hours on end. Uh, I don't have that in the works yet. I could probably do something like that now, just because, like I said, now I've got the library of videos and the concepts and the back references are there. This is more or less what I've been waiting for to some extent. Uh, you could argue I started the live streams about 8 or 9 months earlier than I should have. And that's why they've changed a little bit in that time. But now that I have the back catalog to refer to, I can tackle much more difficult stuff like maturity, right? I can tackle these things because now I can do the back referencing. I can say, see the video on this or see this video on that. And it works. It doesn't work without the videos. Time is a factor and sequence matters. Oh, so yeah. And video games in particular, that is really a question of maturity. Like video games get you stuck at a certain level of maturity. I was rather fortunate. I grew up with 8-bit games and they're fun and you run out of them and then you move on. Not that I didn't play Quake World. I was a world-class Quake World player. I could probably still kick your ass at it. I was in the top 3 of any server I was in for years, actually. It's quite good at that. I'm not good at almost any other games except driving games. I'm really good at driving games. I'm not useless at World of Tanks. Put in way too many hours on World of Tanks. It was a rough few years. Those things trap you in a fantasy world. It doesn't correlate to the real world at all. And the big worry for me with video games in particular, this is always where I struggled, was I don't like these controllers because they're too slow because I have fast twitch nerve fiber. So I think real fast and I react real fast. And I can tell the lag on a Bluetooth controller versus a wired controller. And most people can't. And fair enough, like I get it, but I actually can tell that difference. And so I did not want, we'll say, my response time and delay time and skew time tied to a controller and the reaction of a processor to a TV, because that doesn't match reality. And when you get a chainsaw in your hand, that kind of thing matters, right? When you're hammering a nail in, that actually matters. Now, that's not to say that you can't do both. Some people can, but I'm sure some people can't. And I was never willing to take the chance. But I do that with a lot of things. I'm super, quote, conservative, actually. So when I was at the GNU Labs, they all used Dvorak keyboards. Now, they didn't have Dvorak keyboards. They were using this regular keyboard. It's called QWERTY layout. And they used a program to remap the keys to Dvorak so they could type a little bit faster. Now, I typed 180 words a minute back then. I don't anymore, right? But I typed 180 words a minute. I didn't care. 30% faster meant nothing to me at that point. I was already fast enough. And my fear was that if I had to, that I would have problems switching, right? Probably completely unfounded. It turns out, I would learn later, I'm pretty good at switching, actually. But there's a non-zero chance of mistakes. And in fact, you will increase the mistakes by 100% if you do that. Now, it still may be a small number of mistakes, but the mistakes that you'll make without that, due to that, are still zero if you don't try to do it, right? This is why you don't want to get into too many different things, right? And also, very early on, I was doing support work. Problem with support work is it's not your computer you're working on most of the time anyway. And so having custom macros, custom mappings, custom system environments hinders your work because you come to rely on those tools. And then when they're not there, you don't know what you're doing. And so I was really good at knowing baseline Unix, baseline Windows, all the baselines for the OS, particularly command line, because I typed 180 words a minute. So Why use the GUI? Um, and that was, really important to the job. Uh, so I didn't want my way of interfacing with the world affected by learning Dvorak keyboards or affected by the lag that happens with a controller when you're playing a video game, right? I was already screwing up Quake when I used to play Medic. I was a pretty good Medic. When I used to play Medic, the keyboard didn't go fast enough for me, like at all. And then there's the whole how many keys can you press at the same time thing, right? There's all these factors that go into it. And there's ways around some of that and whatever. But ultimately, it's still limitations. And so you want to pick your limitations carefully. And that was one of the things that I learned as a result of maturing, right? Was, oh, be careful what you get into because when you get into something, you are to some extent constrained by it or trapped by it. Doesn't mean you have to stay that way. Again, there's switching, right? And you can do that. The switching that I do, because I am in fact a software engineer and not a terrible one, a little bit above average, I would say. But I am also a systems engineer. It just turns out that anybody who knows those two things well enough realizes they require different modes of thought. Okay. Most people can't do both ever at all. No one can do them at the same time. So it requires a switch. Now I can do that switch. It's not that much of a problem for me. So while I'm in the middle of coding, you can ask me like, oh, we have a network problem. How do I debug it? And I will have to stop coding and I will have to switch. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds. And I will go, okay, tell that to me again. Right. And then I re-input the data in systems mode and bang, the answer spits out. And then I basically angrily say, now go away. And then I go back into coding mode and then try to pick up where I left off. I'm also very good at picking up where I left off, which is why I can like partially read books over years because I just remember where I left off, and bookmarks really, really are required, but I can do without them sometimes. And then I start reading again, and it's not a problem. It's like contiguous for me. I'm a very strange person, though. Most people can't do anything like that. I feel sorry for them. I don't know how they live, but it's fine. It's fine. So when you mature, you learn those limits in yourself. You learn, oh, I'm not good at this. I am good at that. Other people are good at this, but not me. Oh, good. Well, then maybe there's somebody you want to cooperate with, for example. And those are important ways to see and think about the world. So your maturity is partially because it's all about interacting with not only yourself, but also the outside world. It's part of the thing that enables you to be a better person in the world because you learn to cooperate with the world that you're already in. Like, you don't have to cooperate with the world, but the world's going to beat the crap out of you because it's bigger than you. So, Anselman, did I fulfill your not stepping on childishness? I mean, what's going on? No questions. I figured there'd be a boatload of questions about maturity and not just arguments about the evils of video games, because video games are certainly evil. Um, maybe a necessary evil, but I tend to doubt it because we didn't have them before, and we had games, but not video games. When I was young, two of the kids I was friends with used to hand make pinball machines out of wood and rubber bands and springs. And I was just amazed by that. I was like, this is so cool. So they had games, but they were building their games out of wood and rubber bands mostly, and springs and stuff, and little metal spring bars and things like that. And they had pinballs and they had pinball bumpers and flippers and the whole thing, and it was all made with little metal rods and pieces of wood and pieces of rubber. It was cool. It was really neat, and that was far better than the video games we used to play. But I mean, I could flip Space Invaders on the Atari 2600. I had way too many hours in on that. but also I was a kid. So, what are you going to do? Um, it was interesting. I remember, well, I don't remember the kid's name. We went down to Rhode Island at one point, and he was a spoiled brat. He had every single game for that stupid console, and he did not like to lose, and he did not like to share, and he was miserable to be around. Um, but he wasn't mature. He was a kid. Did he ever mature? I don't know. There was one. There's one person I know who, when I was younger, he was much younger, right? He was like, I don't know, 10 years younger, something like that. Rotten child. Absolutely horrific. Grew up fine. Grew up totally fine. Matured. Got over it. Was a bratty, selfish, obnoxious, generally mean child, and grew up to be a perfectly lovely adult. He was able to mature through whatever mechanism, however it worked. I don't know. But it happened that way, which is, really handy. Super handy. So, no questions? Are you kidding me? On maturity. This is shocking to me. I figured I would be overwhelmed with questions, especially after that stunningly excellent monologue, if I do say so myself. I worked on it all day. On and off, to be fair, because I was doing like 5 things, which is when I'm happiest. When I can do 5 things for most of the day, life is good. Today, life is good. Plus, I have Jordan almonds, so life doesn't get much better. And most of them are pink now, because you don't eat the pink ones until the end, as everybody knows. Um, Only a monster would do that. You gotta preserve the pink ones till because they taste the best, obviously. I don't know why I'd have to say that, but I feel like there might be some among you who are so ill-educated and ill-informed that you weren't aware of this. It's sort of inconceivable to me, but who knows? Who knows? So yeah, I have a video, not a video, an online version of the wisdom card game that is not at all complete or anything. We need a bunch of artwork for it. But it's based on the 7 virtue cards that Sally Joe did. And I did that, or rather, I had the little AI coders do it to test the game mechanics for the board game. So we're doing game mechanic testing. It should be up and working right now. I can't promise that I mean, it's certainly not bug free. I can't promise that, but it should be up and running right now. We're going to test it. We're going to tune the questions. And then, at some point, we'll release it. And of course, it is right up the alley of the thing that will be released first, which is this lovely text that we're working on right now. Whoops. And probably going to go with the same publishing place for the game. That book is coming out sometime in early September. Anselman, would you say immaturity is widespread? Absolutely, immaturity is. We are so. I talked about this before in a previous live stream, right? So we have the crisis of competency, where we don't like everyone's incompetent at their job. That is also the crisis of maturity, which is everyone's freaking immature. This woman comes out and screams at the sky in the middle of the day. Are you going to tell me she's mature? See, now that's not necessarily a problem. And this is a video I've been struggling to figure out how to do, although I might be able to do it now or like in the next couple of weeks. And the problem is not that somebody went out and screamed at the sky. The problem is that that video went viral, right? Because that tells you that other people are either identifying with or identifying against that behavior. The only way that's possible is if that behavior is widespread enough to be noticed by a large number of people. Now, it doesn't mean there's a lot of it, right? But it is an indicator that it's everywhere. That it's everywhere. That's the problem. Okay. So, yeah, we have a big problem with immaturity. The business people are talking about it constantly. If you're in like the entrepreneurship region, although that's been flooded with retardedness lately over the past like 5 years, you will see this. People are talking about like, wow, we feel like we're babysitting our employees. I've read 3 articles in the past 3 or 4 weeks about this. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Simon Sinek talked about this early on. I like Simon Sinek's work, by the way. It's good. Very early work from like 10 years ago or whatever. Very good stuff though. But these people entering the workforce, like they just need things that no one imagine luring somebody to work more than 40 hours a week by giving them free freaking snacks. That was 15 or 20 years ago now. People were doing that scam. That's a scam. It was fun. I read an article about it years and years ago, where people were saying, like, oh, these 40-year-old entrepreneurs are luring 20-year-olds in with free snacks, knowing that that means they won't go to lunch, right? They're luring them in with promise of unlimited vacation. Now, I already know how people work pretty well, so I knew unlimited vacation was a scam. What do you mean unlimited vacation? It doesn't make any sense. Like if you give someone an infinite choice, they'll get scared and not make a choice. Now, the way it was phrased, which is also true, but not as true as the statement I just made, we'll say, or not as big a factor. It's probably the best way to say it. They were saying, oh, it's very competitive, so people were afraid to take time off. Yeah, that's kind of true too. But actually, when you overwhelm them with choice and you don't constrain it, it's very hard for people to make a decision. Well, do I go on vacation for 3 weeks or just 1 week or 3 days? I don't know. I mean, I have unlimited, right? It was a psychological trick to get people to work and not take vacation. This is published. Like there are articles about this all over the place. They're old now, but like, what world are we living in if somebody's offering you free snacks or dinner on Fridays or whatever the hell it is? And I'm not saying that's totally ridiculous and invalid or anything, but like there were people that were parasitically taking advantage of that to fool young kids or who shouldn't have been young. They were all college graduates. They're all like 24 and up into working for them extra hours or working for them at all. And look, man, I mean, I worked at like there were Boston development offices as a trend for a while with these companies. One company opened a Boston development as a research office, right? Because Google had a research office in Boston. Everybody wanted a research office in Boston. Drove up the real estate prices ridiculously in the 2000s. So I worked at one, and I went to another one for an interview. I was a contractor, so like whatever, right? I gun for hire. I'm a mercenary, right? So I go to this other one, and it's a marketing company, and so basically there's hot women everywhere. I mean, absolutely everywhere. They're all young, of course, right? They're all hot young marketing chicks. And I'm like, this is pretty good. And they had a freaking refrigerator like every, I don't know, 15 feet in their building on every floor. And I was like, there's just free drinks and snacks all over the place. And you just get up and go get one whenever you want. This place is, and there's all these gorgeous young women. This place is heaven. And I'm like a techie guy, right? So I'm like, oh, you're never going to get a job better than this. So I was talking to my VP who hired me for the original contract. And I was like, man, they got all this stuff. And he goes, Mark, I can't promise you the women, but, if you want stuff stocked in our fridge, because we had a kitchen and a fridge. Everybody had a kitchen and a fridge in a Boston development office. He was like, just, let us know, we'll stock it up more. And they did, by the way. So, but that's the level of maturity. But that problem is 15 years old, at least 15 years old. So yeah, we have a immaturity widespread. And those people are in their 30s or 40s now, early 40s, right? Yeah. Those people we're not mature then. Maybe they're mature now. I don't know. Maybe they figured it out. Maybe they read the articles. I don't know. It's not. I will check out the wisdom game later tonight. Thank you, sir. Your feedback is always helpful. Yeah, I want people to take notes on the questions. Basically, it's in the project help on the Discord server. Mike, to be mature, my understanding of your thoughts is linked to a person's ability to learn, interact with the world. Yes. I mean, that's how we perceive it, Mike, right? Like when you want to go to dinner and somebody in their 30s is stamping the ground and saying, "No, I don't want to go there." Like, well, how else would you describe that? Right? They're not interacting with the world well. There's a group of like we all knew each other. Like we're all friends. Like most of them directly reported to him, and he's going, "No, I don't want to eat there. I don't know why we have to." It's like, what are you doing, Richard? Grow up, bro. Like I think that's everyone's definition. So one of the things we do, maybe you haven't been here before. One of the things we do is we look at how people are using words instead of just what people think the definition is, or even what the definition is. Although the definitions usually match how people use the words mysteriously in ways they don't understand. But that's a different problem. Anselman, do rulers like to encourage immaturity? No, of course not, because you can't rule over an immature population by definition. Often government adverts talk down to adults as if they were children, especially since the fake news virus scam. There's a couple of different things going on that people don't understand. The easiest way for me to show you the example of this is all newspapers that had wide circulation were written to a 4th grade reading level. Okay? So now go back and watch the video I released yesterday on perspective, and then you will understand. The vast majority of people are not super literate, we'll call them, or it's really comprehension. See my previous live stream on that. They have poor comprehension. And so you have to do that. The video I was contemplating recording today will explain this further, since I haven't recorded it today. And I'm not quite sure I can do it yet. I was hoping Ethan was going to come back and talk, but he didn't. And that's fine. I shouldn't necessarily need Ethan, although his brilliance is often helpful. As are y'all's, everybody's. Is all about this idea that, because Jonathan Peugeot talked about this in his World War II myth thing. You need a flat myth for most people because most people don't understand the myth, right? This is why I get so frustrated with people who start talking about, well, we just need people to read good books. It's like, I don't, like, I have 3 videos on how whatever you think you read when you read Plato's Republic, you missed it, man. You missed it. Your reading comprehension is garbage. If you think Plato's Caves is about the individual breaking out to educate themselves or some nonsense, or breaking free from propaganda, you can't read. Like, I mean that technically. Like, you can't read. Plato is unbelievably clear about this. That is not what it's about at all. Quite, in fact, the opposite. So where are you getting this from? You can't read. You're completely illiterate at that point, right? I mean, that's the problem. Like, most people can't read Plato's Republic. Even people with PhDs get this wrong all the time. All the time. And you want more people to read that and get it confused? No. Good Lord, no. Please stop. Please no. Don't give people more than they can handle. This is what I was saying about the vacation thing. Hey, you tell people they have unlimited vacation, they don't take vacation. This is in the numbers are in on this, guys. Like, I don't have to make up anything. You go look it up. Like, no one takes vacation in companies with unlimited vacation. Now, you'll get 1 or 2 really bold souls who like take a month off or whatever, but usually those are executives and they take a month off in any other environment. In corporations, the guys at the top can go on sabbaticals. You know who can't go on the top on sabbatical in a corporation? Me. It doesn't work. right? Like it's just different for different people for a reason. And that reason's really important. See my video on hierarchy. Oh my goodness. You're going to be the death of me. Um, I, I agree too, Anselm, that they have had to tone it down, but we have an immaturity crisis. So what do you expect? Uh, Rulers have to rule the people. So they have to meet them where they're at. They have to condescend, technically speaking, in order to be able to form them into a society, to rule them, to give proper governance, right? As such. Ixnot, Anselm, and rulers can project immaturity onto their slave class. You guys, stop talking about slave class. Our biggest problem is that we have immature rulers. Justin Trudeau, the entirety of the Canadian government, the entirety of the UK government. These people are immature. All of their candidates in the UK are immature too, until they get a new party, which I've already told Carl Benjamin he should just start the England First Party or something. Forget what I called it. They just need a new party. Everybody they have running is immature, like technically speaking. They're all children. You hear about the dust up with Rupert Lowe, and it's like, you guys are all children, aren't you? They're all 4 years old. Anselm Rosette psyop to humiliate the populace. No, look, man. Like, the government doesn't form you. You're already formed when the government knows about you. Don't blame the government for things. Like, the government is there to help you and cooperate with you to the best of their ability. But because they are their own body, right? They have their own yield. They have momentum and they have to get stuff done and they have to roll over someone. And if you don't want it to be you, frickin' cooperate with them. The number, like, I personally have seen a number of times where somebody refused to let the government help them, right? And then they ended up with less later. But the same result happened. It just took a little bit longer, but they got less out of it, except they stressed themselves out in the middle. That happens all the time to people. It's like, listen, I know you don't like it. And I know sometimes the government is unfair. And don't come to me and talk about it, okay? Because I've got real stories, okay? I'm still missing a $500,000 house. Every single piece of memorabilia practically from my mother and stepfather got stolen from me. And the government helped in both instances. I'm no friend of government, okay? But also, I don't know what you're whining about, but I guarantee you it's not as good as what I'm whining about. And I ain't whining about it, so you don't have to either. It's that simple. I want to hear it. I'm going to be like, screw you. You get nothing on me, nothing. I've seen people get offers for their houses to, put in a road or whatever, and they refuse, and then they get less later. And they get 5 years of nothing but court battles and bankruptcy. Fantastic. Or you could have gotten a pretty good deal, fair deal for your house, and just moved, which you were going to have to do anyway. So the government's bigger than you. Get over it. Like, seriously, get over it. And if you want to change the government, that's fine, but do things that will actually change the government. This is why I'm pissed off at Carl Benjamin. He could actually make a difference and start a party, or move the party, whatever party he wants to. But he's not doing that because he doesn't want to take responsibility. He wants to run his little company, his little YouTube channel. And that's fine. And I support all of that 100%. I bought a bunch of merch from him back in the day. I like the guy, but also, like, he could be better. He could do more. He could help his country a lot more, and he's not doing it because he'd rather bitch about the government all day instead of actually participating in a way that would work. Now, you're in Scotland. The Scots know how to take care of this problem. They put on war paint and start taking people out, man. Given the weakness of the Scottish government, this is a totally valid thing to do. One person could do this. I've seen your freaking goofy parliament building. It's terrible. The people in there have to be all demoralized anyway. Half of them are on cocaine, by the way. Don't ask me how I know. Just saying. Fanticate. I'll also check out what's new with the Wisdom game. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's not about newness. It's more about, do the mechanics work? Need to fix the questions and answers and categorize them correctly, and then feed them back into the game. And then once we have that done, then we do the board game. And we need some artwork, but don't tell Sally. Vanticate. is the main reason for the immaturity problem that people become stuck in fantasy. Well, I don't know that that's the main reason, right? I would call the stuck in fantasy problem a contributing factor. Okay. So the availability of high quality immersive video games does not help. Listen. Okay. I am not sitting here telling you that I did not play several hundreds of hours of multiplayer online games. Okay. I have my Dark Ages of Camelot memories and I have my WoW memories. Okay. I've been into battle. I have led the troops. Okay. For real. Lots of hours. And honestly, probably Quake World, way more hours. Quake World was like, ooh, home from work. 4 hours of Quake World. Sometimes while eating dinner. The main reason for immaturity is a lack of formation. Okay. We have, and I'm not going to make a hard claim on this. Okay. But I am going to state it and say, if you think it's wrong, that's fine. I might be wrong, but you're going to have to bring the goods. Okay. We have substituted this imaginary idea of education for formation. So when people are talking about education, they're describing formation and calling it education. Okay. And now they're upset because the schools are doing the education and that education is wrong. Well, just substitute the word formation. The schools are doing the formation. That's the problem. Schools should not be doing all of the formation. It's certainly not the most important part of the formation, and they're doing it wrong. Well, of course, the schools are doing it wrong. The schools are a group of people that has, in the United States anyway, been increasingly consolidated upwards towards centralized control. Okay. This started happening in the 1970s, thereabouts in the United States. It's 100% clear. I'm not the first, second, or third person to talk about this by far. I read about this too, right? This isn't that hard. These aren't like original Mark ideas. I'll let you know. Don't worry. This happened. Okay. But the more important thing that happened, I think happened I think it's the late 50s, early 60s. I could be wrong. With guys like Dr. Spock, he was the most popular, right? No relation to the Star Trek character, although funny that they're both named Spock. What happened was the parents started treating children like small autonomous adults. And since the parents wanted to be individuals and break free, this is the hippie movement, right? Uh, you know, shove it to the man, all that stuff. Don't trust anyone over 30, right? These are the sorts of things they were saying. They were saying that in the 90s too, by the way. I'm just saying hippies exist still. They were not tending their children. They were not forming their children. They were not caring for their children correctly. And so their children didn't mature. And there was a backlash against that later on in the 80s and 90s, where you get this helicopter parenting, right? The bulldozer parenting thing, right? That whole thing that Peterson's on about. But Peterson's missing the whole game there. Unfortunately, I love Dr. Peterson, but he's missing the whole game there. The game is more about individualism had already ruined everything. And that was a backlash to individualism, was overparenting, right? Or the devouring mother syndrome. So this loss of taking responsibility for your children and forming them yourself is very much at the heart of things. And now, because we have things like binary thinking, I think I bitched about this last week. I'll bitch about it again because it just bothers the crap out of me. It's not a choice of public schools versus homeschooling. That's dumb. That's binary thinking. There's way more options than that. There's charter schools, there's school choice in most places, right? And there's private schools. There's all kinds of options that aren't homeschooling. It'll be fine, right? Or you send your kids to public school. Not everywhere, but almost everywhere in the United States. Public schools are not bad enough that if you form your children well, that they will affect the children. Okay. How do you know that, Mark? Because I have friends with children. So what happened with one of them was their kid went to public school in Merrimack, New Hampshire, right? So one day the teacher spouting some of this climate BS, right? And he knew better. And he said, "No, teacher, that's not true," to the whole class, right? And they threw his ass out and they dragged the parents in. And my buddy said, "Yeah, well, the kid was right. He's going to continue to speak out. If you don't want him to speak out, then you'll have to excuse him from the classes where you talk about climate." And the teacher was baffled, completely baffled. But that was the way it was going to be. And that's what happened. So this is an easy problem to fix if you have balls and you know what the hell you're doing. And if you're a weak little pussy, that's a different problem. You need to grow a pair and mature yourself. You can tell the school, "No, we're not doing this way. No, my child's exempt from that." You can do that. There's nothing they can do about it. They'll just cooperate with you because they'll be so frustrated that it's easier for them to accommodate one kid. Now, does that leave the other kids in the lurch? Maybe. Are they your responsibility? Not entirely. Your kid's still there. He can still influence them. They'll still talk, right? It's not up to you to change the school. You're one person. The school's not one person. It's bigger than you. It's not that hard. Like, people don't know how to do math anymore, I swear. It's like, what are you, all dumb? So it's not a big deal. Like, the availability of being able to stay in fantasy with Uber Eats and Uber in general. I mean, I know a bunch of people don't know how to drive because they've never bothered to try because they've taken Uber their whole lives. Man, when I was, which I'm very, very far out of this, so we're talking 20 years ago or something. When I was in the dating thing, the number of people on the online services that didn't know how to cook, and I'm like, "Well, that's nice, honey. I mean, you're really pretty, but like, I'm not cooking for you. I gotta work." Like, what are we doing? Right? And they were able to stay in this fantasy. Like, "Well, we'll just order it in." I'm like, "Do you know how expensive it is to order food in all the time? Like, once a week?" Abso-freaking-lutely. I think it was Thursdays? Maybe it was Wednesdays. I forget. Maybe it was Friday nights. I forget. There was one night a week when I lived in Brookline where every night we ordered either pizza or subs, or sometimes both, right? Sometimes like pizzas and subs because we're pigs and we're young and we can eat like freaking pigs. And we did because oink oink, right? Like, fair enough. But it wasn't every day. The rest of the time we cooked, right? Like, these people were like, "No, no, I order food all the time." I'm like, "Where do you even get the money to do that? That's amazing." Right? I can't order food anymore because change all the ingredients. It makes me sick. So, different problem. But yeah, you can stay in a fantasy a long time. And they want you in the fantasy. This is the ultimate psyop is things like AI, which people don't realize. It's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, you're gonna get a robot. It's gonna do all your laundry and all your cooking and all these household chores, right? But then you're gonna be dependent upon that robot and you're gonna have to do what the hell you're told by your techno overlords. You idiot." And you're worried about the NPCs who don't like the robots. Yeah, okay. Your uh, your mental retardation is beyond my under. Well, I have no idea what happened there. Uh, I went to click on a comment, and that's what it did. Um, Sorry about that. Ixnot, I blame the Puritan Yankees. You would blame the Puritan Yankees. You're that kind of person. Fanticade. Well, that reminds me of myself in high school. Fake news virus scam. Excellent. Mike, school is one thing. What are your views on political correctness in the workplace? What are you defining as political correctness? I don't understand. I don't actually understand these conversations. You need to be polite to people. And if you can't do that, you can't get along with them in the workplace. So I don't know what constitutes political correctness nowadays or what that even means. It's a corruption of language and words that I just don't personally understand. So, yeah, I don't know. You're gonna have to like work that out for me, because I actually don't actually get it. What is politically correct? Like, politics has to do with governance or voting. That's it. So I don't. What is correct governance or voting? That has nothing to do with workplaces. If you want to use the European definition of politics, which is, more than two people in an area cooperating together, that's a whole different thing. But I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, different structures have different rules, and they need rules because you need rules to cooperate. See any number of my videos on this topic. All right. Anyone else? Anyone want to jump in? I know we had a glitch and now I don't know what happened, but it says there's 3 people watching anyway. I don't know what caused that glitch. That was really strange. But StreamYard does what StreamYard does. All right. I'm going to shut things down. Sorry about the glitch, but I hope this helped. And get out there and get mature, because the more you mature, the better off you will be, and the world needs you to be better. Thank you very much. I'll see you all next week.